Mysta-Clan Productions.
This is a video scripted and produced by Mysta and his editors. Plug of the day. Go check out my Patreon. It will really help the channel grow and sustain itself. Also, Patreon members do get shoutouts at the end of every video, so if you are a Patreon member, make sure to stay to the end to see yourself shouted out. Also, join my Discord, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, thanks to the Dragon Lord, we can roll that intro. What is up, residents of the Mysta-Clan? This is your boy Mysta-Man coming at you with a brand new video. So, if you have not yet seen, I just posted, what if Raven was an MHA, which is a pretty old series back from like September of last year, which was taken down originally, and I just edited out the intro and outro, put a new one, and re-uploaded it because if you don't know, I went on a break. I went on a little vacation to a family reunion. Some stuff went down. Don't really feel like talking about it because nothing interesting. And I am now back and up and ready to go. So, yeah, we got an old what if that I once again revamped. And I'm not going to be talking about juice, and there will not be any duck quacks, so do not worry. This is a what if Deku merged with the Sludge villain, part 1, 1 hour redo. So, yeah, let's just get into it. First, we start off with Izuku Midoriya, a quirkless boy that's never really been mentally stable. He had a quirk, but no one really knew what it was. When he went to the to the quirk doctor, they basically told him that his quirk is not popping up. It shows that he has a quirk, they just can't tell what it is without a triggering moment causing it to activate. His quirk is a once-off activation that will never activate after that again, but the properties might be unique, maybe in a life or death situation, and they went home. Izuku was really sad. He might not become a pro hero now, but his mom encouraged him. As the time went by and the kids at school started bullying him, telling him that he only said that he had a quirk and not really had one. This, over time, wore his mental state down, and he became all the more unstable, to the point where he could be classified as crazy. But he's always been good at not showing his feelings. Basically, what's happening is his face would always be straight, it would have no emotion, and even if he felt something, he would keep it deep inside, unless he was somewhere comfortable. If he was, for example, out in the wild, where he sometimes killed small animals. Something not to brag about, but it did happen. He found ways to keep his bloodlust under control, and did so occasionally, around once a month on a weekend. But as he grew older, this didn't satisfy. By the time he entered middle school, he had more convincement to himself to actually hurt people. But once again, he kept it down inside. After one day, while Bakugo smacked his book down on the table, burning his notes on how to win a fight instead of hero studies. He did have heroes there, but instead of explaining their quirks, it would explain how to defeat heroes, in case he ever needs it. Bakugo would rant on, as Deku cannot become a hero and he never will. He should give up and go kill himself by jumping off of the school roof. Obviously, we get a flashback to earlier, like in most anime, and we see the teacher coming in saying that I can see you all want to be heroes. And he threw papers up in the sky. No need to pass out this aptitude test. And after a while of people cheering, Bakugo in his snarky voice would say that no one else there could become a hero except him. They'd be lucky if they become sidekicks to some B-listers. The teacher would talk about how Bakugo wants to go to the best school, and that Midoriya would apply as well. This is what caused the interaction later on. After Deku had taken his now burned book and put it back in his backpack, he starts leaving. He thinks that that altercation took too long, so maybe taking the shortcut home might be a better opportunity for him. So he basically wanted to go hunt, as he calls it, killing small animals in the forest, and he would go through the same place he did in canon, getting attacked by the Sludge villain. But this time, what would happen is, as All Might arrives, there would be a blinding light, which doesn't affect All Might all that long, before a few seconds, and he could see as Deku absorbs the Sludge villain by accident, crying in the process. All Might would ask him what's wrong, and he'd start puking. I don't know what happened. And All Might would say, I think your quirk activated. But the quirk doctor said my quirk might never activate. So you are one of those cases that needs a trigger to activate. You probably have a life or death situation type of quirk activation. You need to go to the quirk doctor, my boy, but I will be off. All Might proceeds to jump off. Izuku would be found by some police who were called in by All Might, obviously being that one quirkless cop that really dealt with most things All Might in the series. He would take Deku to the quirk doctor, keeping it on the down low, and the quirk doctor would explain this is a private quirk doctor, or not the quirk doctor, but this is more like someone like Nezu. Not exactly Nezu, but it's someone that has strong connection to All Might and can do him some favors. It turns out Deku, his quirk activated in a life or death situation, absorbing the thing that tried to kill him. If that other thing turned out to be a quirk user, well, some funny stuff would start to happen. His body would mutate depending on the thing he absorbed, and he can control the sludge. He can create more of it within his stomach, and it can even peer through his skin, basically replacing his blood at some point, and is basically what drives him at this point. There are many things he can do, like consuming toxic waste, general messy items, and he could even do feats that the Sludge villain couldn't do. Somewhat of a quirk evolution if the Sludge villain had to evolve his quirk. So maybe a forced quirk evolution? Question mark? But nonetheless, Deku is excited. He has powers, but he doesn't show it. The quirk doctor and the cop of All Mights would explain to him that he should use this power carefully, as they're gonna say that this has always been his quirk since birth, and the Sludge villain is still on the run somewhere just to keep him safe. He would agree and proceed to go home. Over the 10 months, Deku would start training. By training, I mean going to the forest and using his sludge to kill and absorb animals. The amount of sludge had basically grown, and he had eventually puked up most of his blood. When he was wondering what's happening, the Sludge villain would start laughing within his head maniacally. Haha, kid, you absorbed me. We're one now. But it went wrong, didn't it? Looks like I can't control you. Whatever, I'll just torture you from over here. Deku would become concerned, but keep it to himself. He's never actually been mentally stable, so this won't affect him too much. The Sludge villain had come to a conclusion that, similar to himself transforming into sludge, Deku's entire bodily fluids became sludge. That's how he can control it to that state. 95% of the human body is filled with blood, so Deku's mostly sludge at this point. He has gained an immunity to all types of poisons, and can basically go without breathing, as long as he has his sludge, because his sludge can forcibly make his lungs expand and not expand, so Deku is pretty well off. There's just one drawback. When he activates his quirk, it is very painful for him because it does force itself through his skin, if you will. It doesn't leave marks, but it is excruciatingly painful, and this could cause some further mental issues with Deku, if you will. So, proceeding a few days later, the Sludge villain has been taking his sleep away and told him, "You're tired, right? If you want to sleep, it's easy. Just kill someone and I'll let you sleep." The Sludge villain, obviously being just as psychotic as Deku, would basically be driving him to further mental uncomfort. He would basically force Deku to kill someone if he ever wants to sleep again, similar to how Shikaku did to Gaara in Naruto. But Deku actually took to his word. He head to the street. It's time he purged these alleys. Every night, or every other night, in the upcoming few months, he would go out and kill some villains or thugs in an alleyway. He would kill and absorb them, gaining some of their power. None of them actually had quirks, until now. He would pull up at the end of the 10-month time skip, having fluctuated his patterns. He only went out once every other weekend instead of every other night, because the news started getting suspicious. They thought it was a vigilante, and around this time, hero killer Stain would be coming into fame, so they'd assume it's him. He would see a corrupt hero, if you ask me, a knockoff version of Night Eye, because his quirk allows him to see about 5 seconds into the future. Deku would realize this after encountering him and fighting him for a while, and the thing that makes this hero really dirty is that he, you know, I don't want to say it because of YouTube, but he would force people into becoming slaves and then sell them off to some group. And Deku had realized this and started planning. Deku is a lot like that guy from the show Dexter. He, instead of using his urges for evil, tries to use them for good. At this point, Deku would realize his patterns and have an idea. They've been fighting for about 20 minutes at this point, and Deku starts using his slime to scale a building. The person would think he's running away and then decide to just stay guard. About 20 seconds later, after he entered another alleyway, Deku would basically let out the full capacity of his slime in this giant alleyway and fall down on him to the point where he can't really escape. He would proceed to absorb the hero and get some weaker version of future sight that allows him to see 2 seconds into the future, just enough to dodge a fatal attack if ever needed. He somewhat understands this and basically gets used to it, but not in time. This really messes with his head, for this is the end of the 10-month time skip, but in this encounter he did pass out because of the future vision really putting a lot of strain on his brain. Someone else picks him up. A man in red clad and a bandage around his neck, hero killer Stain, and takes him to a warehouse. In the morning when Deku wakes up, he basically doesn't have his future vision activated. Stain would ask him what that was about, and he'd explain that first of all, it has nothing to do to you. Second of all, these streets need to be cleansed. These people need to be gotten rid of. They're ruining our city. Stain would agree with Deku and ask him about his quirk, explain who he is, and Deku would sort of just agree. He would tell Stain, because of Stain's name, that he has an odd quirk. His quirk activated when he was attacked by the famous Sludge villain, and for the last 10 months has secretly been killing gang members, villains, and corrupt heroes within alleyways every other weekend. Stain would say that that's a noble cause and that they should join forces. After a few days of them convincing each other that they should be allies, Deku trained with Stain, basically gaining a grasp over his future vision and somewhat gaining the expertise he needed to fight well. Stain would tell him that he should go to UA. He could be a good spy for their now upcoming group. And Deku would agree. He would join UA to spy on the heroes, find future corruptness. Stain would agree to kill Bakugo if the chance ever arose, because that's all Deku's really waiting for. So, after their agreement, Deku would return to Stain every weekend for giving him information and training somewhat. It was almost time for him to go to UA and start his test. But this time of him and Stain training did not go by unaffected. The Sludge villain had been planting more seeds in his mind, telling him that It's finally there. He's not exactly a villain, but he's far from a hero now. So he might as well roll with it. Do good while he can. At least the best a villain can do. This would obviously infuriate Deku, but not as much as it could have. So, pushing it to the back of his mind, Deku would push on to his first friend Stain's wishes. Stain and Deku see each other as brothers, neither who would betray each other, but either would die for the cause. And now that's what happened. Deku would get to UA. Bakugo would yell at him, "Why'd you come here? I told you you'd die!" But Deku wouldn't care. He'd ignore him and take a seat. They'd take their hero aptitude test, if you will, of him actually doing something. He would take the test and probably come out pretty high. His observation skill, thanks to his quirk, he could make limbs anywhere on his body. So he would create limbs to look on other people's tests, and thus, after figuring out some things, only got the questions that Nezu set up wrong. So he kinda got everything else right, which would make him the #1 student, at least academically. Moving on to the next one, Deku and Bakugo would be split up and they'd go to different places to take on the robots. Deku would easily basically start after President Mike tells them to, taking out left and right more and more robots. He would be taking out robots faster than most students and absorbing the metal they leave behind to increase his sludge. His slime would increase in mass and would actually stay outside of his body since he doesn't have enough place to put it within his brother. Or in his body, not brother, sorry. So after keeping all the slime, he would destroy robots faster and faster, and his bloodlust would take over. Instead of stopping after he got enough points, he'd just go on and go on. Most other people would at this point not even have enough. The only people that have enough at this point would probably be Lita and Uraraka, and some other background characters that we wouldn't really notice. So, after gaining an abundance of slime, probably enough to destroy an entire building, he would encounter the sludge villain. He'd hear the girl screaming for her life. His sadistic mind would think he should let her leave and then destroy the robot. But him always wanting to be a hero and the sludge villain commenting on, "Oh, so you are a villain now," he'd decide to save her. He'd use all this extra sludge he gained to destroy the robot. He couldn't absorb it because this was an intense battle of him hitting it from every side possible and then releasing a bunch of it. He even lost some sludge, if you will. So he basically destroyed the 0-pointer and went on to the next round. He'd pick up Uraraka and take her to the nurse's office where he would pass out. The nurse would basically just give him in some fluids, which would be probably water, and it would get him enough sludge to continue walking. He would return to his non-biologic brother Stain, a person is basically his best friend at this point. After he returns home, Inko would ask him why he arrived late, and he'd explain he passed out from exhaustion and stuff, so we wouldn't really have to worry about that. The next day, he'd say he's going out for extra training because even though he's getting into the best school, or he's confident he's getting into the best school ever, he still needs to keep up his strength. Inko, being super happy that her boy has a quirk and stuff, would support it 100%. Because it is classified as an S-rank quirk at this point because its limits are unknown, and it's also unclear if it's evolved to its max potential yet. So it would be pushed on, so Inko would be more supportive than she was. She wouldn't be as protective seeing as there aren't a lot of S-rank quirks around. Also, Deku, when he says training, meant he'd go to his brother-like figure Stain to tell him what happened. Stain would congratulate him on getting into UA and ask him if there's any valuable information. He'd say that Bakugo is probably making it in, and there are stuck a bunch that might fit their criteria in the future. He would take this to note and they'd start their training. For the next 2 weeks, Deku and Stain would be on and off seriously training, Deku seeing more benefit than Stain. Stain does get a little more benefit than he would have in canon, for he has a training partner now. And by DBZ logic, you can become a lot stronger by having a training partner. Also, Deku would somewhat adapt to his new future vision, and the headaches would start going away. He'd start learning to use it to his advantage, and Stain would see this. He's adapting a lot quicker to martial arts styles, and would also be able to push himself forward much faster than any other character or any other person within the My Hero world because of his newly found adaptiveness. Even though he has a broken mind, his spirit is stronger than any other. So, after little effort, their sparring session was over. Deku had learned a lot for one day, and it was time for them to hunt. Hunt their prey. Hunts weren't uncommon for Stain and Deku in these last few days, or few weeks if you will. They've gone on many, spending almost every day together. And Deku gets a little enthusiastic, losing himself in the bloodlust. So, Deku is getting there. He's observed a lot of people, their personalities messing with his head. Two in particular. The gentleman, which had originally merged with him, the Sludge villain, constantly speaking to him. And the other, a person no one would expect. Also, the other would be the person with future sight. His name would be Toshinkaji. Why do I always mess this stuff up? Whatever. Toshinkaji is a really corrupt hero. He was a weird man, but nonetheless, he strived on hurting Deku, similar to the Sludge villain. They are entities within Deku's mind, always there to thwart him. They would work on him day after day, pushing him to his mental boundaries, and he's reached it. He went berserk, almost killing his brother, who barely managed to get away. But this might have been a good thing, since you see, Stain and Deku have been targeting some criminal financists in this last time, and a criminal gang called the Yakuza had started to investigate. Two of their main members had also come to try and interfere. It wasn't anyone from Overhaul Squad, just someone with a flight quirk or a wing quirk, which we know who it is. It's a newly graduated high school member that used to bully Deku. This might have pushed him even a little more. The other had a water manipulation ability and could draw water from the air. They were strange people, and they thought they could kill Deku. The water manipulatists thought that the sludge was actually water, but it wasn't, so they couldn't really do anything. Amongst the 200 members there, these two were the strongest. Deku, in his broken-minded state right now, takes them out with ease, breaking them down far more than they ever could, causing an enemy he might regret later, the Yakuza. After killing and absorbing these two, he gets another mental sting. Something was happening. His body was evolving. Suddenly, a large amount of water, green water somehow, started appearing. His sludge started liquefying, and then hardening again, to the point of where it was almost as hard as stone. He grew two wings, green sludge-like patterns on them, and then starts flying throughout the warehouse, mercilessly slaughtering most of the Yakuza members. Then passes out as the mutation completes. Stain would once again grab his brother and leap away. The next few days go by, and Deku has been asleep. Stain, in his civilian self, would have gone to Inko's house and explained to her that Deku has been training extra hard and then just fell asleep at the gym, which Inko would believe and say thanks. He'd say that he would keep Deku safe and make sure he comes home in a few days. Inko would once again thank him and he'd be off. He would go to look after his sleeping brother, training in the meantime. Deku, after waking up, would be informed of his mini comatose-like state and would talk a little different, his voice breaking at every word. He started stuttering because of the mental lashback. He had 2 more people in his head, and he needs to push them out. These 2 weren't as bad as either the Sludge villain or even anyone else. He was different. The one he absorbed first. Toshin Kagi, the person he hated most, and the person that helped him the most. He pushed him when he was down. Even though Toshin Kagi was corrupt, he still had a sense of justice. Even though he tortured Deku, he'd also motivate him, push him forward, make sure he continues, making him stronger. The 2 new ones were quickly outwitted and suppressed by Toshin Kagi, and the only one he couldn't really suppress was the Sludge villain, because of his unique bond with Deku, if you will. So even though he can't get rid of them, he can at least handle them for now. Getting less and less broken as the other 2 were suppressed, Deku finally got his sensibility back, asking his brother what happened. Deku would think that these new powers he can feel inside of him are something new. He thinks that his quirk will always be evolving. Going back to the quirk doctor for another assessment, it would turn out that the quirk doctor could see a gene beyond the normal quirk gene, which might just push him to never stop evolving. The quirk doctor would suggest Goku come back every few months so they could assist his quirk and see what's going on. This is one of the few special type quirks he's ever seen, and it might just be the most unique in the world. It will always evolve. It will always become stronger. The quirk's name had changed, and the quirk name has officially been documented. The ever-evolving toxicity. Reference to my Discord. Go join the Toxic Homeland, link in the description. Deku would return to his brother, as I just said, and they'd start working on what he could do now. Stain would always need to evolve, become stronger physically to keep up with whom he considered his brother, so that he could always push him to new heights, to learn more, to become the symbol they needed for their cause, a symbol with monstrous abilities, but worked in the name of peace. This is what Deku was to Stain, the peace that will one day be reached. Now there is a week for them to train beyond their limits, until Deku's time at UA will start. At that point they won't be seeing each other as often, which saddens both parties, but it must happen. They would train, having Deku feel like a ninja from Naruto. He can create giant tidal waves by turning his sludge into liquid, undensifying and increasing the mass. Or he could turn it as hard as stone by condensing it. He could put most of it into his body, making his body stronger, faster, more durable. He was a machine at this point. What out there could stop him? He would push on to become the greatest hero. And that's exactly what he will do. Now his time at UA would start. He would make his way to Class 1A, which is his class, by the way. When he gets there, Bakugo would go on the normal rant, but this time being more pissed at a more senile Deku, or not senile, but more emotionless Deku. Aizawa would have been watching at this point because he heard to look out for Midoriya. He has an odd quirk, if you will. So, after Deku throws a giant explosion and Deku creates basically a giant shield of slime, if you will, that's harder than any metal that most explosion could destroy, he would just walk away, pissing Bakugo off even more. Aizawa would stand up early and then yell at Bakugo how he is scum. He's worse than scum. He's a villain, and he knows it. So, now that Bakugo knows his stances when it comes to Aizawa, we can properly start this what if. Now, UA has started, and the test is coming up. Things would go mostly to canon until they get to the locker room. When they get to the locker room, Deku would basically kick Mineta, yeah, because he's more serious and a total badass. He would literally just yeet Mineta, kick him into a wall, and then proceed to fill in the wall with rock hard sludge, which Jiro would see and basically be like, damn. She would proceed to tell all the other girls about it, and Mineta would be really scared. Even Kaminari would be like, yo man, relax. Deku, with blood red eyes at this point, will look up at him and say, you're a pervert too, aren't you? You want to get your shit beaten? Or should you just go? Kaminari, now quickly putting on the rest of his sports uniform and bolting out with Mineta half naked in suit, Deku would make his way to the training field. Aizawa would be there sleeping, waiting for them. Deku, after arriving, would basically cause Kaminari and Mineta once again to tense up, and Aizawa would see something probably happen, and would ask someone else about it later. Jiro would approach him after everyone's gotten there and tell him about it, so he'd have it in mind. The test would start, and because Deku would be the number one student in this case, basically, not Bakugo, he would have to throw the ball first, and with his new powers it was a little easier. He would basically create wings and then also some water, basically as he throws it, knocking it harder with the wing and then creating a burst of wind, also pushing water or waterish sludge up towards it, pushing it even further at a pretty good angle to get a pretty good distance. Bakugo would be angry and be like, he shouldn't be able to get that far. He'd get around 800 and something meters, and Bakugo would be up next. When Bakugo goes, he would get 700 and something meters, enraging him even more, throwing a couple more explosions toward Deku, Aizawa being tempted to tell him he's expelled, but Deku would give him a look like, I really don't care, and Aizawa would let it slide. Everyone else, like Momo, Todoroki, and some of the other non-as-important characters, would take their turns, all getting less than Deku, making Deku the winner of this contest. As it goes on, Deku gets ways to finesse the rest of the tests, getting first in most of them. He would get first place for this time, and Aizawa would say no one was expelled. Momo, saying that she knew it, basically says it, and Deku's like, well, you're wrong. He was going to expel everyone here. And when Momo's like, what? Aizawa would say, yes, I was going to expel everyone here, but because of certain people looking over towards Deku, I decided to give all you scrubby bunch a shot. Everyone would be shocked and would move on. It would be about another week or so of classes before the actual USJ came along. The USJ is more or less an important event that could really help the cause, and I personally think that this is where the turning point comes. When the USJ would begin and the League of Villains would show up, Deku would see his chance. He would be transported into the water, and this is his new playing ground. He can move around at increasingly high speeds, going upwards of 200 kilometers an hour underwater, which if you don't know is about 150 miles. It's actually pretty fast, probably less than that, I don't know. So he's basically faster than Froppy underwater, he would grab Moneta and Froppy, ball out, knocking out the villains as he went. When he gets on top at the surface, he'd make his way to most of the other places, kicking villains' asses as Aizawa is keeping the Nomu busy. As he takes out most of the villains and the other kids group up with other groups to help them, Deku would arrive to see Aizawa's face being beaten in by the Nomu. He would start taking charge, beating on the Nomu, and knocking it around with ease. It's not really taking much damage, but when it does, it heals. Deku would realize this, and Todoroki would see, this is the kid that's been killing all those people.
He's really something, isn't he, Kirigiri?
Yes, young master. This obviously interests him, even though Stain told him to go do something to himself in a corner involving his hand and third leg. He was still interested in Deku. He would basically try and recruit him by telling him, "Hey, you're broken too, aren't you?" "What does it have to do with you?" Deku would ask.
"Well, what if I say I could fix it?"
Obviously, Kirigiri did have some information, but not the information Deku thought. Shigaraki would have said broken by meaning out of place, and by fix it, he meant I'll give you a place. This was obviously not what Deku was looking for, but nonetheless, he would go. All Might would see this powerhouse that just beat this Nomu pretty easily. Even though the Nomu's still alive, he'd see that Deku had really grown after getting that quirk, but then he sees him turning evil. All Might blames himself. "If it wasn't for me, that kid might have had a normal life. Now he's going over to the dark side. I can't let this happen." He'd break through his limits, destroying the Nomu, having Kirigiri take Shigaraki and Deku to the dark side. Deku has come to the dark side. This is where our adventure starts getting interesting. Deku is about to change. He's about to get more psychotic, more manipulative, more seductive, more sadistic. Everything is about to change. First of all, when Deku arrived, Shigaraki tasked Kirigiri at teaching him mannerisms. And Kirigiri seemed to know what this means, although Deku didn't. "I'm not some type of pet you can play with, Shigaraki. Fix me and get over with it." "I did fix you. I brought you here. Now listen to Kirigiri. That's the only way you'll fit in." Deku would scoff and then say, "Whatever. I hope you're not as dumb as your bosses." "What do you mean, dumb, young master?" "Well, I didn't mean to say dumb, but you get what I meant. Now let's just get this over with." Shigaraki would really get on Deku's nerves, but he wouldn't let it bother him way too much. Kirigiri would start Deku's quote-unquote mannerism training, which is actually just getting him accustomed to the villain life. Teach him how to be formal when he meets up with other villains. Teach him sleight of hand if he ever needs to make a deal off of a bet. Teach him how to read cards, because bets seem to be oftenly occurring in the Mafia, especially when dealing with them. Also, he teaches him seductive mannerisms, if that's what Shigaraki meant, Deku thought. But by seductive, I mean if he comes over a female, seduce her, do to her what you want, get the information you need. That's what he learned. He learned how to be sadistic, like he wasn't even sadistic to begin with. This time, he knows how to torture, how to play with people's minds, really mess with them, to become strong. He feels himself becoming closer to the two insane voices in his head. This is exactly what we need, Deku said, and the two voices agreed. Exactly what we need. They are now on the dark side, working for the dark side to destroy the light. That is what they're doing. Now we move on. Deku is put on the Vanguard Assault Force of the League of Villains, with some interesting individuals. Right now, the only members are Muscular, Dabi, Twice, and Toga. Toga, from the bat, took a liking to Deku, especially when she heard that he used to be a hero. She asked him constantly why he turned, and he said to fix it. She wouldn't ask why because she could see he didn't want to talk about it. And this is where the relationships would bloom. The Vanguard attack force would really get along with each other, except for one individual. This individual obviously being Muscular. He feels a little out of place, but wouldn't really say anything because he's scared of Shigaraki. It's one of the few people that can actually kill him, so he just pushed it off. He'd deal with these kids as long as he could. Their first mission arose. Some mafia, not the Yakuza, some other groups, would be messing with a League of Villain territory. Why did I just mumble? And they would be sent on their first mission to take care of it. On the way there, Muscular would be blabbing on as always, and they would walk into yet another trap. After the one Deku and Stain encountered a while back before UA occurred, this is really different. This is a larger group, except it's not a couple of hundred, it's a couple of thousand. Soldiers waiting because they heard Deku was here. The heroes still believe Deku was abducted and not that he turned, because All Might said that he'd handle it. He'd get the boy back. So, assumingly, Aizawa told the principal Deku was captured for his unique abilities. All Might hasn't been at UA recently. He's been working on his mistakes. He had come into contact with a previous associate by the name of Gran Torino to try and get help to find the boy. Coming out of retirement, Gran Torino would let his previous student have this one thing. He would help him find the boy he seeks. Deku, on the other hand, started a massive battle with over 1,000 people, mostly quirked. None with actual useful quirks per se, so Deku wouldn't really bother trying to absorb them. In the time Deku started battling, he started cutting them in half, squashing them, creating blood. This day Deku gained a name. The Scarlet Waters. His sludge drenched in blood, as thin as water, cutting through every enemy with precision. Deku is a monster. Everyone knows it. Now, even Muscular is scared. Damn, I shouldn't have told the kid all that stuff. Deku had killed most of the thousands, killing slightly over 1,000, with the rest of the Vanguard attack force killing a few hundred altogether. And this was impressive, but Muscular still had to say some stuff. He said, "Well, kid, for once you weren't useless and actually used something that wasn't your mouth." And this pushed Deku. He created a water blade, or a sludge blade at this point, cutting off Muscular's head, absorbing his body. Somehow Muscular is still alive, and Deku easily says, "This is why you shouldn't mess with kids, Muscular, because they'll kill you." Stomping his head, ending the man's life. Now Deku is a villain. Nothing could say he wasn't. He embraced the darkness and no longer protects the light. As the Vanguard attack force of the League of Villains arrived back at base, Shigaraki obviously asked the obvious. That's a weird way to say it, but he asked where Muscular was, and Deku scoffed and walked away.
Wow, why is he in such a crappy mood? Someone shit in his cornflakes?
Then Dabi would say, well, he killed Muscular. He was getting out of hand, if you will. At least the most that Muscular can. And now he's gone. It's not like it's a massive loss. He's in any ways weak. We're gonna go back to the boss.
What do you mean, the boss? I'm the boss.
Then Toga would respond, "No, Shigaraki, you're not the boss. Deku's our boss. The Vanguard attack forces might work for the League, but you can consider us no longer a part of the League. We're just more like acquaintances at this point. We follow Deku now." They'd leave. Obviously, Shigaraki would decide he'd need to talk to Deku later, but Kurogiri says that he probably should not. Deku just got a new quirk and they don't know how that might stack on the rest of his. Shigaraki would scoff and say,
Unfair that he has All for One's quirk, but a better one. He doesn't need any genetical enhancements or anything to use them. It's kind of stupid if you think about it.
And they'd walk off. Deku would take his Vanguard attack force somewhere else, to the streets, killing corrupt heroes and gang members. But in doing this, they made a new enemy who just showed up, sporting a plague mask and some weird clothing. This is Overhaul. He plainly says, "I want you to stop going after my men, or I'll kill you." Deku would smile and look back at him. "You? Kill us? I'd like to see you try. Codename Overhaul." "So you do know about me?" "Yes. You're named after your quirk. You can change the physics behind certain items, changing their properties and their shapes. And it's theorized that you can even change biology itself, like humans, combining or disassembling them. I'm coming for you, Overhaul. Don't think I'm not. You pissed me off enough. You're dead in a few." Overhaul would disappear and basically try and commune with Shigaraki. He'd basically proposed the alliance earlier. And Shigaraki would say, "Well, you're trying to form an alliance with me to get my Vanguard attack force to be obedient, aren't you?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing."
"Well, too bad to say that the Vanguard attack force isn't a part of the League anymore." "What?" "Exactly as I said. They left the League. They still work with us, but we're not their bosses anymore."
"Oh, damn. Well, looks like you have no use to me." Obviously, Overhaul would try and basically kill Shigaraki, but Kurogiri would cut off one of Overhaul's arms. "Oh, you seriously just did that? Didn't expect that. Whatever." He picks back up his arm, uses his quirk to reattach it, and then just walks off.
"Ha! What a dweeb. He's so disgusting. Let's go, Kurogiri."
They'd make their way back to the bar, and Deku's still nowhere to be found. The Vanguard attack force is somewhat of an anomaly at this point. Not exactly like the other villain squads, but still somewhat a part of them. Our main characters for now, the Vanguard attack force, would disappear. And where they reappear next is a little surprising. Time has gone on and wars have been fought, but now comes back to canon. They are now currently sitting in the audience of the UA Sports Festival finale, or the last tournament, where we currently see the final match between one Katsuki Bakugo and one Todoroki, or Shoto Todoroki, where Bakugo is just working on his nerves at this point. "You not wanting to use both your quirks doesn't have anything to do with your dad, does it? Because you're a coward. A real coward." Shoto, not taking any of this to head, just continues throwing ice everywhere. "Seriously, just use your full power, or else you're just as weak as your father." This would trigger something in Shoto's mind. Shoto would think that Bakugo is a smaller version of Endeavor, an obstacle he needs to overcome to one day surpass his father and prove his point. After some more convincing, Shoto would be pushed to use both of his quirks. And now the fight got a lot harder. Bakugo, basically using his explosions to fly at this point, shooting himself all over the place, would barely be able to dodge the two different type of attacks Shoto has been throwing at him. Eventually, Bakugo would get tired, and Shoto, instead of just hitting him with ice or something, would use a massive iceberg, to push his fist forward and encompass it with ice to knock Bakugo out with a fist-to-fist or a fist-to-face knockout. Like, there's been no chance. As soon as Shoto got serious, Bakugo was basically dead. And instead of Shoto being like, guess I should not use my quirk anymore, he's like, now I see, this is no longer my father's quirk, this is mine. I must use it to surpass him and prove to him that I never needed him. I don't need his training. I don't need his help. I am the number one. This would obviously not be true, but still, it would give Shoto that motivation. Bakugo, being infuriated that he lost, would still go on like he did in canon, still be muzzled, but this time he gets second. After the tournament was over, we basically see Bakugo walking home after being unmuzzled, and no one's to be seen. At this point, the new Vanguard attack force would appear, with Deku looking a lot different. You can't really see his face because it's covered in a rock-hard green-looking substance. Then he knocks Bakugo down, his voice changing much deeper. You have one chance to change your ways. Become a true hero and stop being a villain, or you die. Bakugo starts throwing explosions everywhere, but it's not doing anything to Deku, or as he sees this mysterious man. Toga and basically Dabi are... Toga, Dabi, and Twice are all there, but they're clones. Even Deku was a clone. After Bakugo's like, why can't I defeat him? Why is he so strong? They just fade into nothingness. Because it was a clone, Katsuki Bakugo, you have been warned. Obey or die. They would once again disappear into the night. The Vanguard attack force, now leaving the scene, will be confronted by a rather known figure, All Might. That's you, isn't it, young Midoriya? What does it have to do with you, All Might? Now, broken Midoriya says, well, it's my fault that you turned out this way. If I'd been there earlier, you would have never followed this villainous path. I'm not following a villainous path. I'm a vigilante. I'm cleaning the streets, killing corrupt heroes and villains. If a hero is willing to change, I'd let them live. But there aren't a lot of those. They always think they can win. And if you let them go after they beg you, they keep doing what they're doing. They never actually change. So unless you convince them otherwise, they're just scum polluting our earth with their trash selves. I know, young Midoriya, but you're not doing this the right way. Come back to the side of justice. We will accept you and your friends here with open arms. You could change it the right way, from the inside. Not force it to change. Rather, convince it to. I know, All Might, but... He would choke. Slime spouting out. Out of the slime, two figures form, resembling two characters, if you might, that we met, or not necessarily met, but know of. This is Toshinkage and the Sludge villain in their human forms, colored and all. They would tell All Might, don't even try and take our boy away from us. We shaped him into what he is now. Deku lays unconscious on the floor, while these two are talking. It took us forever to break him. It took us forever to get him to follow this path. Now let him correct this world. Let him make it better. Now, Vanguards, take him. We don't have to survive. Our conscience is connected to Deku. Just take him and leave. The Sludge villain, in his human form, and Toshinkage would only last about 20 seconds against All Might. This was enough time for the Vanguard attack force to find a way out. Once Deku woke up, he would say, Jesus, those two took over again, didn't they? And Dabi, who was by his side, says, yes, boss. They did. And they helped us get you away. Good. Seems like they're being useful for once. I feel like a hunt. Let's go, boys. They would once again disappear off into the night, doing who knows what. Hunting has become one of their favorite things to do. So, not long from now, they will be coming back. They will show everyone the path a hero needs to follow. The true path of a hero. This is what they mean. This is what they need. So, quick discussion. This is an hour special, and I'm going to have a 5-minute discussion right here because I really wanted to say some things. As you can see in my intro and outro, I do have a Patreon. The reason for this is, even though I'm monetized, my AdSense account is kind of blocked, so I don't really make any money off of YouTube. So, not making any money is, I'm pretty struggling with my part-time job to keep up with Wi-Fi and other type of bills. So, if you want to really help, please go and check out my Patreon, where you just need to become a low-tier member. If we get 20 members right there, we could pay off my Wi-Fi bill, and we would have our content like usual. I do this 10-minute special just to try and give y'all something back because y'all have been really supportive towards my channel. This doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop uploading or anything. I will probably be able to continue by going to like public cafes to upload the videos, but the quality will really go down. So if you do not mind, please go check out my Patreon. It really helps. Also, my Discord. My Discord is a sore subject because yeah, we do have 160 members, but barely anyone is actually active. We have about 10 people that ever talk, and I decided to do something. Now that my Patreon has come into light, I will be giving away gift cards every so often on my Discord for those who are active in actual chats and VCs. So make sure to go check that out. Thank you. So, also, I just wanted to give a few shout outs to my editors. They've been helping a lot, having these videos come out daily, plus they're edited. Also, my friend the Dragon Lord for creating my intro and outro. He helps me with a lot of what if ideas. Kidzu Studios, same thing. And basically the last thing right here is there is going to be a spot opening on our group channel, the Avatars of the Mysta-Clan. There are currently 5 members including myself, and we're looking for a 6th and final member. The competition is over on my Discord, and the sign-ups will end on the 24th of February. On the 28th, there will be a large charity live stream with me and a few other bigger YouTubers that are basically going to try and gather some money for either St. Jude's Hospital for Children or Make-A-Wish Foundation. So this is basically to give back to those people that really need it, and also this is a way for us to more or less show that we're not heartless YouTubers or whatever. So yeah, also on the 28th of February when this happens, we're gonna be doing a vote on stream to see who is the final member. Currently 4 people have entered, and anyone is welcome as long as they have a YouTube channel and is willing to upload, and not just upload once and quit, but to upload at least twice or 3 times a week, and also upload on our group channel, the Avatars of the Mysta-Clan, link in the description if you're not subscribed. Check out my other channel, Mysta-Man Comics, link also in the description. That's where I post DC and Marvel related content. I suggest actually watching it because a lot of ideas I got for DC and Marvel based what ifs come in these comments. I will be doing more isekai type videos as people asked because I don't know why they're so popular, and I will be continuing what if Goku was in Naruto, and might even do what if Naruto or what if Team 7 were transported to My Hero or Shield Hero. So really dependent on what the polls decide. Polls are up at least once every few days to see what the next what if is going to be. I'm going to try and make this series a 1-hour special series with a 5-minute discussion at the end of every video where I could just commune with the community. So if you want anything based on Q&A, if I get more than 30 questions in this video's comment section, I will be answering all of them in a special Q&A video. This will be once again announced in the next video, so make sure to leave your questions so I can answer anything you have to ask. Also, there's been a lot of people being pretty toxic in my comments. I don't care if you're just toxic in general, but don't be targeted toxic where you target certain people to be toxic to them and just like put them out. Because once again, I hold everyone on an equal platter. Have they 100 million subscribers or 10? If you're going to be toxic, I will hide you from the chat and you won't ever be able to actually comment again. Just remember this. Also, thanks to the comment moderators who've been removing all those spam bots out of my comments, it really does help most of the time. that is going to be all for this video. Us at Mysta-Clan Productions, including 6 Mysta and his editors, thank you for finishing the video. Now for official shoutouts and Patreon members at the end.
Mysta-Clan Productions.
Join my Discord, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, thanks to the following people for becoming Patreons: Kahakashi Obachiha. And remember to check out the link in the description because the Dragon Lord created both our intro and outro. Now roll that outro. Peace.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Subscribe for more.
Yada yada does it.